Ladies and gentlemen, we're ready for the next session, which is Art and Enterprise for Conflict Resolution. This session is a panel discussion and book launch for Untouched Octaves. Our speakers are Bobby Sager, Parvez Hoodboy, and Salman Ahmed. The moderator for this session is Amin Hashwani. Amin Hashwani is a businessman, social activist, and English language poet. Parvez Hoodboy is a leading nuclear physicist, public figure, and commentator. He is a professor of physics and mathematics at FC College Lahore. Bobby Sager is an American businessman, philanthropist, photographer, and inspirational speaker. He is author of the book, The Power of the Invisible Sun. Salman Ahmed is a Pakistani musician, rock guitarist, and also a physician, a social activist, and professor at City University, New York. Welcome, everyone.
Good afternoon and Assalamu alaikum, everyone. On the stage, we have a rock star and a peace activist, an entrepreneur and a philanthropist, and a physicist and a civil society activist. And as we go along, we'll see how we try to link all these pieces together. Let me start by giving a context to our session today. One of the earliest plays that was discovered was the Persians. The Persians was part of the Greek tragedy. 2,500 years ago it was written. And it was about Xerxes, who is defeated at the Battle of Salamis. And it is about, the Greek tragedy was about the crowd feeling empathy for the characters. And here, the Greeks were expected to cry for Xerxes. What was significant was, just before that, the Persians had raided Athens. They had burnt down the Acropolis. They had ransacked the entire city. And yet, you had this play where the crowd was expected to cry for Xerxes. The play Persian was not about the Persians, it was about the Greeks. And the idea was, if you can develop feelings for your worst of enemies, your most hated enemies, you would automatically develop the capacity to have empathy for your fellow citizens. Let's fast forward 2,500 years to our present day. I wonder what will be the reaction if you have a play on Tehreek-e-Taliban at the Al-Hamra Museum Hall telling their part of the story. Or for that matter, about the Kashmir issue in Bombay, a play about Burhanuddin Wani. I wonder what will be the crowd's reaction. Or, for that matter, Osama bin Laden on Broadway, what will be the crowd's reaction? Or the Hamas in Tel Aviv. While we've progressed technologically, but we need to ask ourselves, how much have we evolved as a society? And all of us know today, we are living in a very polarized world with people like, it's not just Donald Trump, it's Le Pen, Modi, Bibi Netanyahu, or Rodriguez in the Philippines. While nationalism binds us, but it also blinds us. And I think it is very important for us to explore other avenues of cooperation, collaboration, and how to tackle issues like globalization, deforestation, conflicts, etc. Because now we as a civilization are at a tipping point where a lot of the issues that we're facing will become irreversible. So we just cannot afford the kind of follies that we made historically. With this, we will begin with a video.
Lights off करो अभी.
Start.
September 12th.
वाइटल साइंस की परफॉर्मेंस होती है तो सलमान बहुत आगे आगे रहता था, तो मुझे उसकी वजह से बड़ा सहारा मिल जाता था खुद भी परफॉर्म करने के अंदर, और यह है कि जिम्मेदारी काफ़ी हद तक बढ़ जाती थी. तो यूँ जब सलमान वाइटल साइंस छोड़ कर गया था तो मुझे उसकी कमी बहुत ज़्यादा महसूस हुई.
जो आज है याद आते तो हैं ख्वाब अधूरे सही आज भी मेरी राहें रोकती हैं यादें तेरी दामन खींचती हैं भूल चुके हैं जो हमें याद आते तो सदियों के फासले आज है दरमियां हो जाए मगर जितनी भी दूरियां जहाँ भी रहे हमारे तो हैं ख्वाब अधूरे सही ख्वाब सहारे तो हैं आज भी मेरी राहें रोकती हैं यादें तेरी दामन खींचती हैं भूल चुके हैं जो हमें याद आते तो हैं वाले तो हैं।
ऐसे सलमान को भी अगर आ गया ना तो तू यहाँ रह के अब महसूस करेगा थोड़े अरसे के अंदर तू ऑप्टिमिस्टिक बन जाएगा। The kind of person you are, I know you, तू एक ऑप्टिमिस्ट बन जाएगा। तो यकीन कर मैं तो
Salman, let me start with this, with you. As this video clearly demonstrates the emotional bond that you and Junaid had. Both of you started together with Vital Signs, yet both of you chose separate paths. And may I say, opposite paths. And in some ways symbolize the polarity within the Pakistan society, the right and the left, for use of a better word. Yet, through all of that, in our span of nearly 30 years, both of you maintained your friendship, your bond, despite being on the opposite ends of the spectrum. How did you manage to do that? What were the elements in that? And what are the lessons one can learn as a society when Pakistan itself is facing such polarities?
So, Amin, thanks so much for, and Karachi Literature Festival, Amina Sayed, to have me on this really august panel, because these are the real rock stars on this panel right now. And as you'll get to know, you know Parvez Hoodbawai, you know Amin Hashwani. My friend Bobby Sager is an incredible artist, and you'll hear their story. So, compassion, right? When we, as artists, what are we trying to achieve through the music, through the images, through the poetry, through film, television? We're trying to take an accurate, realistic snapshot of life. We're trying to capture truth in all of its hazy, foggy illustrations. So Junaid and I was studying in medical college in Lahore, 18 years old. He was in engineering university. We were told by our parents that never become a musician, okay? There's no future in music. And become a doctor, become an engineer, don't go down this road of being an artist. And what did we have between us? Well, love. We just loved spending time with each other, and I used to have a guitar, and he had a voice. So through those interactions, it was a military dictatorship of General Zia, where you couldn't go up on television and play, certainly not guitar music. And there was no promotion of music or being in a band. But this is what I feel that artists have. They're rebellious to begin with. They're passionate about what they're doing. And we had an imagination which was running wild, and we thought that, what if we wrote our own songs? If we wrote our own songs, I'm sure at least 3 people might want to listen to them, right? So we did our songwriting in college, and most of our friends hated our music. They just said, don't give up the day job. But we were pit bulls. We just loved each other's company and our other friends who became the Vital Signs. And we recorded these songs against all odds. And out of that collision of cultures, because he came from a different background and I came from a different one. I grew up in America. So I was trying to impose my knowledge on him. He was trying to sort of tell me that he knows more. And out of that cultural collision came Dil Dil Pakistan. Now, if somebody would have told us at that time, when we were just strumming Dil Dil Pakistan at home, that in 2017, that would become the 3rd most popular pop anthem in the world, would get millions and millions of hits online, we would have said, get out of here, right? But so that's the power of art. That's the power of friendship also. It's the power of compassion. That when we come with alternative views, right? Not alternative facts, but alternative views. When we come with a different lens and look at life in our own unique way, then some combustion happens, right? So as the journey unfolded, I went in a certain direction because I was on a journey of self-discovery. I wanted to know what it means to be an artist, to what it means to be a Pakistani, growing up in the times of dictatorship, and then this sort of musical chairs of democracy that we've had in the country. And I wanted to express that through my art. He took a different road. He said, perhaps maybe pop music or rock music isn't the answer. Maybe it's going deeper into the soul, discovering, vocal music, which he didn't call music, he called it religious hymns. But it was music to me. It was always music to me. He would express his soul through the nasheeds that he sang. And over the last 5 years of his life, before he died in that terrible tragedy on December 7th, we were talking more and more to each other about how can we affect society, how can we bring people together rather than divide them. And, he had severe restrictions on him. Just like me I don't see myself as extreme left or extreme right. I'm a radical centrist. But restrictions that society puts on you, like if you wear this and you wear these clothes, they see you in a certain way. And when he was wearing a shalwar kameez and had a beard, they'd see him in another way. So the darts were being thrown from both the left and the right. But what did we do? We said, who cares? Just come back to the place of love, which is the heart, and let's try to make sense of this confusion and chaos.
Okay, thank you. Bobby, over to you. Let me give a little anecdote here. When 9/11 happened, 2 weeks later, Bobby calls me up and he says, I'm coming in. I said, you can't. The conflict is about to start, and he ends up coming over here. We took him to certain refugee camps, etc. And then he said he wants to go up north to the Afghan border. And that was the time when the US bombings were about to start. As a matter of fact, they had already started. And here you have an American coming in. The last thing anyone on the face of this earth wants to go is there. And that's exactly what he did. And at that time, I said, I'm too scared. I'm not going. If you want to go, you can go. And he actually went. When the earthquake happened, he spent the Christmas with his family in the tents amongst all those displaced people and victims. He's funded a lot of initiatives within Pakistan. He does his philanthropy in 16 countries, from Rwanda, Bhutan, Palestinian, with the Palestinians in the Middle East over here. He funded the Citizen Foundation School as well, a teacher center in the earthquake area. So, Bobby, my question to you is, you're a capitalist by profession, right? You ran a $20 billion company. From there, that's a lot of money all around you, and there's a lot of temptation, right? From there to switch to philanthropy, give up your capitalist way of life, and actually become a philanthropist, a global philanthropist. Isn't there a contradiction between the two, profit and philanthropy? And what made you do that? And how do you reconcile between the two?
First of all, hello everyone. Nice to be back in Pakistan. When I came here after September 11th, it wasn't, for some kind of thrill ride. I was here because I wanted to have a first-hand perspective on what was going on and what people were talking about, so that I could go back to the United States and talk with, with real insight, to share what I actually saw and heard and felt on the ground. We all know that very often there's distorting filters that come from the media or just from the haze of distance or bias. And I have the great opportunity to be able to talk to people in the United States and around the world about my firsthand experiences with the people in Afghanistan and the people in Pakistan and the people in Palestine, etc. So in my experience, by the way, here in Pakistan, is that this image that exists certainly in the United States and other places that the people of Pakistan are somehow the problem is exactly upside down, as you all are obviously very much aware that the biggest victims of terrorism in the world are the people of Pakistan, and the probably the greatest resource in helping to fight terrorism and radical extremism are the people like you in this room. Extremists, really radical extremists, are willing to die for what they believe in. And so I'd ask all of us to think about what is it that we're willing to do, what actually willing to do, not just to say we disagree or that's wrong or something, but what are we actually willing to do? And so my motivation in coming here today is to talk about what an individual can do. This is what I've done now for the last 20 years. Amin mentioned that I ran a big business that I started, and in this idea of capitalism and trying to make peace and so forth. For me, it's businessmen don't make peace. Politicians supposedly make peace, but businessmen can help to create an environment where peace is more likely. And getting to peace is just the first step. The idea is, how do you sustain peace? And so creating economic opportunity creates optimism, and optimism helps to fuel the possibility of peace. In terms of some kind of like conflict between business and peace, right now I own a company called Polaroid, the camera company that I bought 6 years ago. I'm not the only shareholder, but I'm the largest shareholder, and 100% of the money that I make from Polaroid goes to help people. So that was my purpose in buying it. So I think it's a sort of it's a distinction that doesn't necessarily really need to be made between sort of making money and trying to make a difference. I'd just say two more quick things. My point of view as it relates to peace, and we look around the world and there's a lot of reasons to be pessimistic. But I think if you think about the fact that over the last 1,000 years, or maybe more, that actually right now, even though there's a lot of issues, a lot of problems, I don't want to minimize it, but in the last 1,000 years, this is about as good as it gets. So this overwhelming pessimism that some people feel, that they're kind of like, the world is just in such terrible shape and there's nothing we can do about it. I reject that, and I would use as an example the observation that the Germans in World War II killed something like 20 million Russians. Today, Russia and Germany are each other's biggest trading partners because they found common opportunity. And you start to say, how am I going to make a better life for my kids and a better future? please, everybody, don't allow yourselves to be disabled by pessimism. We, all of us as individuals, need to find ways in each of us in our own ways, with our own resources and with our own passion on how we can make the world a little bit better.
Dr. Hudboy, you're a physicist from MIT, and yet you're known here more for your civil society activism and voicing your opinions, especially at times where people like us would be too scared to open their mouth. Tell me, how do you see the civil society evolving in Pakistan? I know you have certain critical views, as well as, is there any hope for optimism as we go forward? What exactly would you tell an audience like this we should do to make things better?
Well, civil society exists. It's small, scared, afraid of voicing itself. When they try to voice themselves, as we found out just 4 weeks ago, people get kidnapped, they disappear, then they miraculously reappear, and they will not speak about who kidnapped them. Is there hope? Of course there's hope. There's always hope as long as there are people, so let's not even talk about that, of course. But I want to come back to what you raised at the beginning, and I do want to voice certain differences. Look, art, poetry, literature, that's the stuff that we are supposed to be talking about, so let's stick to that. You asked me a very nice question, I can talk a lot about that. Let's get on to the substance. Yeah, art, literature, poetry, wonderful stuff, as long as there's a thought behind it that we're all the same, as long as we are guided by the humanistic impulse, by humanism. You can have art and poetry and music in the service of fascism, in the service of dictatorship. And just because a few guys get up and dance and have a nice song, don't think that that's necessarily progressive. The problem is there's too much poetry. We are too much in the grip of the wrong kind of poetry in this country. Of the Shaheen, of the Mard-e-Momin, of the Tegh-o-Talwar. Look what our great national poet has to say about हम जो जीते थे तो जंगों की मुसीबत के लिए और मरते थे तेरे नाम की अजमत के लिए. Oh man, it really rocks me up. So here's this guy with a big beard who hates women and sells women's apparel and who has stores all over the country. Sure, we are very sad he died, but look, there are much greater people who died who were never celebrated. Poetry is that which brings us together. And this is why I love you, Amin, because your poetry does that, and we'll talk about that later. But poetry has to have a purpose. It has to have, if it is to build peace, it has to bring us together, not separate us. We have wonderful poets amongst us, those who have written in the native language, in Urdu, in Sindhi, in Punjabi. We have examples, we have the expression of the human spirit in the terms of love stories. Love stories in every language. It's Romeo and Juliet in English. It's Sasai Punu in Sindhi. It's Shireen Farhad in Persian, in Urdu. It's Heer Ranjha and Punjabi, etc., etc. That's the sort of poetry that brings our commonality, that says you and the person on the other side of the border, we share common emotions, that there's something human that binds us together. If that is the spirit of poetry, if that's the spirit of music, yes. But just dancing away, sorry, I don't go for that.
I want to get back at Pervez.
All right.
I need to say something because Professor Hoodboy has a view, and many people, as you can hear from his fans out there, see life in Pakistan through his lens. It's one lens. You see, anytime when a cricket World Cup final is happening or a Super Bowl is happening, they're like 24 camera lenses. And why do they have 24 camera lenses? Because the truth can't be seen by one eye. And so his view, which I respect, Professor Pervez, if I can call you, I respect your passion and the lens through which you see life in Pakistan and life in general, but respectfully, when you put down a cultural icon like Junaid Jamshed, who basically, look, it's like Art and Enterprise is the title, right? He moved people, millions and millions of youth of Pakistan, towards unity through his music. Then he built hospitals, the charity work that he did. His apparel companies are most successful in the world. I mean, we're here telling people about Bobby Seger, that he runs a $20 billion empire, and we talk about him in superlatives. Well, Junaid, at the same time, as a Pakistani entrepreneur, an artist, and a spiritual thinker, moved millions and millions and millions of people. Now, he might not have been moving as quickly as you wanted him to move, but there's a respect that I think we should afford to Pakistanis who try to do something.
That's fine. Let's conclude on this point. I respect both of your point of views, and it's perfectly fine to agree to disagree, and that's what Pakistan should be, right? And what I really liked, I think Dr. Hoodboy had a very, very strong, he was very passionate about his views. I could see Salman got a bit disturbed because of that, but he gave a very, very respectful response to that, disagreeing but within norms. And I think this is an excellent example for us to have our discourse within our society. And that is what really should be. It should not be, we come at each other's throat like a prime time talk shows. It's just nonsense where we do not even have the capacity to even listen to each other. It's more of a debating club. They just come, it's a whole catharsis that just goes on, right? And there's no conclusion whatsoever. So I would like to view this as a great demonstration. This is how our discourse should be. Difference of opinion, but with mutual respect as well. Okay, moving on now. Bobby?
Can I just say one thing about that? There's a quote that I really love that goes, knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens. And so to Mean's point, yes, there can be all kinds of different points of view. The really critical thing is whether we're really present with an open mind and an open heart and listening, truly listening to what the other has to say.
Thank you. Okay, Bobby, over to you. I want to talk about the book. This book has a lot of Bobby's pictures in them. He's passionate about photography. He goes to all these God-forsaken corners of the world and takes some of the most incredible pictures. Bobby, if you can share, why the hell do you go to all these God-forsaken places, and that too with the camera? And do you feel scared? And why do you do that? And if you can speak something about your pictures as well.
Well, I'm not going to these places to take photographs. I'm going to these places to to try to find ways to make a difference in people's lives. And the photographs are really a byproduct of that effort. We were talking before about the sort of the power of the moment. I think in our lives, we spend almost our whole lives, most of us, myself included, either fretting about what will happen or regretting what has happened, and not really being here in this moment right now and experiencing the magic of that moment. My photography is about trying to capture the magic of that moment. The photograph on the cover of this book is a photograph of a Tibetan monk. This was taken in Boston, and this was the first moment that he saw an ocean. He had never seen an ocean, and this is that first moment of sort of, unbridled joy. When I take a photograph, in general, I'm taking photographs of very close-up photographs of people's faces. And from my experience, actually, the closer you get, the better the photograph, because I'm trying to sort of go into someone's eyes. That saying about the eyes being the window to the soul. So for me, a photograph is 95% is the moment of making a human connection. Only 5% or so of it is the actual physical, the kind of like, hitting the shutter and thinking about the lighting and so forth. I use the camera as a way to connect with people, and I hope that that's what people see when they look at some of the images in this book.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. Dr. Hudbhoy, you wanted to say something about the book?
Well, first of all, your pictures are brilliant. I love them. And they are so well synced with the poems that it makes for a delightful reading on the whole. Amin's poems are of many different kinds. They draw upon various kinds of human experiences, and they're inspired by different things. They're inspired by people, by events, and also deep ruminations. As a physicist, as somebody who likes to think about more abstract things, I'm more drawn to the ones in which you have reminisced, you have pondered on that which is deep and unfathomable. And in particular, I like one poem of yours. I'll read it out, but let me at the outset say that I'm not a critic of poetry. I've never studied poetry, except, what we learn in school. Everybody learns in school. And I don't think Amin went to a school where he was taught how to write poetry. He learned it himself because he wanted to express himself. And I'm sure most amongst you do not have formal training in poetry. Yet, this is a book that we can pick up and enjoy. It's like music, classical music in particular. Only a few people have actual training in it, but you can learn to listen to it and enjoy it. And in that sense, I've enjoyed your poetry. Let me read out one that I found very moving, actually. I once plunged into a pool of piranhas. Piranhas are flesh-eating fish, of course. I once plunged into a pool of piranhas. My presence was still there after they were done with my flesh and bones. I continued to smile at their instinctive surprise and wished them bon appetit for a high-spirited life. So the fish have eaten away his bones, his flesh. It's just his bones left, and he's wishing them happy eating. There's something interesting because, look, poets tend to celebrate life, and we all do celebrate life. But there's only a few who learn to celebrate death. And I found that interesting. And I found that interesting because in my mind, I recalled a verse from Khalil Gibran, 130 years ago, who wrote in Arabic, became an immigrant to the United States, and wrote many, many very beautiful books on poetry, including one called The Prophet. I'll just read a couple of lines from there. For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And when the earth shall claim your limbs, then shall you truly dance. This too is a celebration of death, which at the same time becomes a celebration of life itself. And with your permission, I'll just read one more. It's called A Selfie. I came across a man who was buried before his time. Only his half-opened eyes were still alive to witness a crime committed by the roll of a dice. Who had thrown it? Or when or where was it to stop? He was not sure, but he was certain of all that it had done to him. It was only then I realized that it wasn't a dream for him, but just for me. And so I quickly switched sides to take refuge in my awakeness. It's beautiful. It becomes more beautiful when you ponder upon it. And so here is something that evokes the same emotion within us. And although Salman and I have briefly disagreed, we are still friends, we will remain friends, yet perhaps it raised the same emotion in him as in me, the same across the border with Bobby. So there's that universalism, there's that something common that's appealing to the human experience. That is what resolves conflict. That is what brings the human race together. So thank you, Amin.
Salman, you'd like to say something?
Yeah, I feel really privileged that along the genesis of this book, this amazing book, Untouched Octaves, and Amin has been sharing. Amin is the most humble poet I've ever met in my life, or read about, or he does not put himself out there. And I want to take a little bit of credit for telling him that until and unless people read your beautiful, illuminating poetry, no one's really going to know you aside from the other amazing stuff that you're doing, which is humanitarian pursuits and creation of business. And then when he shared the book on email a few weeks back when I was in New York, I was just blown away because Bobby's pictures are the perfect counterfoil to this poetry. Multi-dimensional poetry, multi-dimensional images. And this reminds me of the story. I want to tell this story that, when Einstein came up with the theory of relativity, journalists flocked to him and they said, "Professor, how did you arrive at E is equal to mc squared? Perfectly rational, logical, there's no daylight here." So Einstein smiled at them and said, "Music." And they thought he was pulling their leg, and he said, "How could you arrive at this, this mathematical equation through music?" So he explained. He said that, I'm a violinist, I play piano, and also listen to classical music. He said, while I was practicing my music, while I was listening to the music, I saw the architectures in the language of art I saw the theory of relativity in the language of art, which I did not want to put into any equation. I just wanted to see what was my heart's eye seeing. So he said once he had seen the entire landscape of the theory of relativity in the language of art, it was a fairly simple process in changing it into the language of science. So he also said something like imagination, logic takes you from A to B, but imagination takes you everywhere. Amin's book does that for me. It goes beyond left and right and wrong. It takes you into a multi-dimensional space.
Thank you, Salman. With this, we only have 15 minutes to go. The floor is open for any questions anyone would have. Sir.
Bobby, I remember watching your TED Talk, and one of the things that I found really touching in that was these 4 boys who had a really scared look in their face, and then you made them laugh. And the picture before and after was beautiful, to see the transformation in them. Also wanted to know if you could find it in your heart to forgive somebody who took money from you for a teacher training center and ran a school instead. So that was my comment to you. And to Dr. Hoodboy, the tale that you just mentioned about the 4 bloggers who were disappeared, I find something encouraging in that tale. And the fact is that maybe social media is a very strong force and medium, which is why the forces that disappeared these people reacted and did that. So maybe that is encouraging, and we need to use that more to spread the type of thinking that you demonstrate and the type of thinking that Syed Satya Hasan demonstrated, but still find a way of doing it so that we don't get you disappeared.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Sir, please.
Can I just quickly respond to that?
Sure.
It's not a matter of speculation that the response of civil society led to the release of these 4 abducted activists, because I have had an email from one of them who within 24 hours was whisked away to the Netherlands. He's written saying, "Thank all our friends for having participated in the demonstrations for our release. Had it not happened, had you people not protested, we don't know what would have happened to us."
Okay. Thank you. Question, please. One there. Very quickly, we're running out of time. Just stick to the question.
Hi, so this is a question from Salman and from Parvez Hoodboy as well, and all of you. So there are like a lot of unsung artists, unsung heroes, and there's no academy or there's no place where they can come, they can showcase what they're doing. So you guys have been there, done that. You can provide a platform for the youngsters. So is there a plan for doing such activity?
Actually, I was really lucky last weekend to be at this TCF event, Ubarte Sitare. I was invited by Amin and his family, Sultana Hashmani, his mom, and I was blown away. The amount of musical talent that exists in Pakistan, and these were teenagers, all of these kids, teenagers, and this is a secret I'm going to tell you because I'm under contract not to divulge this, but we're all friends here. Those 4 of those girls who I saw, amazing voices, will be recording with me in the next couple of months.
Sir, just 1 minute, please. Very quickly. We'll take 2 or 3 questions together and then we will answer.
What I'm wondering is that we have not, after all this discussion, we don't know how art and enterprise can do the conflict resolution.
I think Bobby was representing, he epitomizes enterprise in its prime form.
Well,
and it's conflict resolution.
It's a philanthropy. It is parting from
No,
what he has earned.
I think there's a fundamental difference between throwing money at a problem versus going there eyeball to eyeball and finding solutions. If you'll see his keynote later on, you will understand what Bobby is doing all about, and if you can read about it. It's about
I
conflict
hope
resolution.
so. Will Salman sing one of your poems?
So, Professor Anita is visiting from Oregon, and she's
I just have a simple question. I'm wondering, this is really for Salman and Pervez, but perhaps you, Amin, I don't know you. What young singers today in Pakistan, or old singers, but I mean new singers, do you feel are making an important dent in their songs to promote conflict resolution?
So, great question. After 9/11, let's take the change that happened in Pakistan because music took a nosedive, extremism went up. Young people weren't, when we were in the 90s being able to play to more than close to 100,000 people in cricket stadiums, that whole thing took a nosedive because of this culture war, global culture war. Who's right, who's wrong. But what's amazing what's happened is that even though young people haven't had the chance to go out and perform, there's platforms like Coke Studio, which is allowing them expression. There's platforms like this Ubharte Sitare. I mean, that was a revelation for me to see young teenagers who might have been maybe 1 or 2 year old when 9/11 took place. And they are singing classical, they're singing pop music, rock music. So conflict resolution, when you talk about conflict resolution, I think art or music in itself is, by being expressed, creates compassion, harmony, love. Then poetry, which is, it could be social poetry. I've seen it, I've been at political rallies across the country. Young teenagers, really no names, have come up with these anthems for change, for accountability. Pakistani youth is really vibrant, involved, and I think they're 10 steps ahead of where the pundits are in terms of where Pakistan needs to go. So I think we should follow the voices of the youth.
We have last two questions.
Can I quickly comment on that? Yeah?
Please go ahead.
We have to distinguish between two forms of conflict: internal within a society and external with other societies. Just the fact that we have music, that music is a permitted form of expression, helps diminish the internal conflict within a society. The fact that women are allowed to show their faces is, again, I think, something that leads to a reduction in conflict internally. However, this does not necessarily result in a resolution of conflicts or a lessening of conflicts with external neighbors. So any form of music is good for lessening internal, but it does not necessarily have to do anything with external conflict.
All right, now we'll take, there are like 4 questions. We'll just take them very, very quickly and then we'll just answer at once. Quickly, go.
My question is from Professor Pervez Hudbhai and Salman Ahmed also.
Quick.
Unfortunately, much of the corruption that takes place these days from our school system, the kind of education we are getting. Is there any possibility, my question is there any possibility of bringing music to our schools and classes?
That's fine, thank you. Next, who has the mic? Go.
Hello, Salman. Been a huge fan of yours since the Vital Science days. We missed the documentary in the beginning. Is it possible to see it somewhere on YouTube? Is it possible to see a Junoon reunion someday, like the original lineup?
Okay, thank you. Next.
My question is for Dr. Pervez Hudbhai, and the one word which has been very popular among media, that is narrative and narrative. I often hear this word. Do you think the narrative is going to be changed? I don't understand you. I'm saying that one word has been very popular among media, that is narrative. Are we going to change the narrative, or narrative is going to remain the same? But in the realism of that, we have the literacy rate so alarmingly low. Do you think that this conflict resolution through literature, or is it possible in the country like Pakistan? And how many years is it going to take to bring this
Okay,
change.
thank you. Last question. Please go ahead.
I want to know how does Salman explain Junaid Jamshed's apology to the young generation for leading them astray through his music? He has apologized.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the questions are mostly directed.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Salman, quickly.
Do you want to go first? Go ahead.
You guys have 1.5 minutes.
Okay,
each.
so I'm going to quickly answer the gentleman in the back. So the video that you saw is a trailer for a documentary film on the life of Junaid Jamshed, and your question is going to be covered in that in depth. I think I'll be doing a disservice both to your question and to Junaid's life by just giving a short answer to it. So if you can wait for that film to come. Secondly, you said that Junoon's reunion, is that the question? So never say never, It can certainly happen, and we're musicians. We like to jam. We like to get together. There's a timing for everything, and I think there'll be a time for a Junoon reunion as well. And the third question, I think, was in terms of how conflict resolution and art can work. So let me give you a real-time example. In 2009, when the Taliban came into Swat, I've been living in America since 2002. I came here, I met with Amin. Amin and I took a tour of the country. And my dear late friend Faizan Pirzada was part of those discussions as well. And we saw what the Taliban are doing to Pakistani society. That this is an alien culture divorced from Pakistani society, yet they're trying to impose it by this gruesome murder, violence, and these fatwas and all of that. Now, I said to Amin, my heart is cut up. I'm living in New York. I'd like to do something, and I wrote both to Bobby Sager and Amin that if I put together, I was a UN Goodwill Ambassador, if I put together a concert for Pakistan, will you gentlemen, friends, come and support that? And this is the power of art, and where Amin came, he became one of the MCs, and Bobby, not only did he support through resources to make it possible for Sting, Outlandish, Deepak Chopra, so many great artists who were there that night, and speakers. Bobby and his organization made it possible for that to happen. And then the other United Nations officials who had never sanctioned a concert, a rock concert at the UN, they also, through the art and through the passion that people saw, bent their rules to allow a concert for Pakistan to take place. Now, did we change Pakistan's extremism?
We have only 1.5 minutes, so...
Yeah, I'm trying to finish what I'm saying. So, what we did do was save people, girls like Malala Yousafzai, who came from the Swat Valley, who became great activists. So, it's not, as my impatient friend, Mr. Hudbhai, wants
not
change.
Impatient, I think
he wants change to occur overnight. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a while.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Hudbhai,
I'm not impatient, but there are important questions to be answered. Can we have music in schools? Yes, there already is music, but it's only in upscale schools. We need to have it in ordinary schools. We need to take away the notion that having music is something morally bad. In fact, today it has not been resolved whether music is something that is sanctioned in Islam, which is why I'm always very puzzled when people with beards dance and sing. On the issue of do we need a counter-narrative? Yes. Pakistan is in terrible trouble. We have lost 60,000 people to those who think that this should become an Islamic state. And their own version, their own vision of an Islamic state. So today, the National Action Counter-Terrorism Authority, NACTA, is working on a counter-narrative. I was part of that. This meeting happened last month, and it was a meeting of about 150 people, which included the ulema, people with beards, people without beards, people who were bureaucrats, retired army officers, a few people like me, and so forth. And the collective opinion was, we need a new direction for Pakistan which is not based on religion. Because if we do that, we will always be cutting each other's throats. We need to become a normal country of the world.
Okay, thank you. Last comments, Bobby, over to you.
Just two final comments. First, with all respect to the gentleman in the front row, I do the opposite of throw money at things, and if you want to understand more about what I do, come to my keynote, which is after this or at 5 o'clock or something. And the last thing I would say is, to quote the great Sufi poet Rumi, and I'll probably butcher the quote a little bit, but as it relates to Mean's book, the quote is something like, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself."
All right. Last words. This book, I just want to acknowledge, I dedicated it to my parents, my late father, and my mother, who's right here. If I didn't have a gun to my head, this book would have never been published. I'm quite shy about my writings. Just very quickly, people say in Pakistan people do not read books, and much fewer read poetry. I think the problem is not that people are not reading, it's the mode of reading that they are adapting. And we, or people in the literary circles, need to adapt to those changes. The social media, right? Everyone is carrying these phones and we are reading all the time. So I would argue that people are actually reading much more. It's just that the way they're reading or the forms that they're reading is much, much different. So I think if the literary community needs to reach out and be read, they need to adapt to the changing environment. With that, thank you very much. Goodbye. God bless.
Awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to let you know that Amin Hashwani's book is available for sale at the entrance. You can purchase a copy.